We'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. All board members are present, and so is our Budget Advisory Committee members. The date and location of the next meeting is November 14th at Belmont Elementary School. However, I'm on it, Randy, I promise. That is the night of the plan for tomorrow. Parent public hearing for Canterbury. So tonight we said we'd talk about moving that.
So are we looking to move to another day that week, like we did with this one?
I propose the 16th.
I'm like jumping right in there.
16 works for me.
Should we do the 16th?
I can do 4. Michael?
And that is a regular
That's a
school board meeting.
regular school
But we would
meeting.
also need our budget advisory committee then?
I can't do the 16th.
16th is a Thursday.
Yeah.
I can do the 15th.
I can't do the 15th, but I don't have to be here if I'm the only one. I have my own board meeting, so.
I can do the 15th.
Everybody else? I can tentatively do the 15th.
I could try and move something on the 16th, if everybody's available that night. I can tentatively do the 16th as well, so.
Is it something that can be moved? Now there's some things you can be moved,
Yeah,
something.
get one
Oh. Or,
going. I'll do my best. Try.
okay, well, what about the 13th?
13th works, right? I can do the 13th. It's a Monday.
Do the 13th.
13th?
I won't be able to do 13 or 14.
Okay. Jay?
Okay.
Okay, 13th it is. Thank you. Yes. Okay, public communication and correspondence.
If we have something about robotics, would this be our time to talk about it?
You certainly can make a comment in public comment.
Okay.
Yes.
My name is Amira Provost. I am the VRC coach, so the high school robotics coach. I'm also volunteering to help the IQ coach. I would like the budget committee to consider increasing the stipend for both the VRC program and also the middle school program. Last year, I put close to 1,500 hours into the program. We received, I split the stipend with Mr. Hayes because we're co-coaching. And it averaged out, I think I received 2,200 for the season, and I put 1,500 hours in, and that came out to be like $1.80 something an hour. There is a lot of work that goes into coaching, and it's just something that I know budget is tight. I know you guys don't have an easy job. As far as Appendix B, if in Appendix B the advisor could be increased to 0.1 for VRC and 0.05 minimum at least for the middle school. It's a lot of hours and it's a lot of work. And I've already put 450 hours in for this season. We haven't had our first competition yet. Our first competition is Saturday. So I'm probably going to put 2,000 hours in, so it's pretty much a full-time job. If you have any questions on what we do as far as robotics, what the kids learn, what we do as a coach, whether for VRC or for IQ, I'm happy to answer any questions.
And those are in Appendix B, correct?
So some of them are in Appendix B and some are in the grant. So the general fund covers the Appendix B piece. And then the grant has a total of $2,000 that's allocated, and that is salaries and benefit fixed cost items. So.
Just ask a general question about Appendix B, which
Yes.
is, I assume that for everything that's listed in Appendix B and the removals and the reductions and the additions and all that, there are people there to advocate or who oversee those. So like, if there's something at the high school, I assume high school representation is there.
Yeah.
For clubs, who is representing if maybe a principal doesn't know how much time is being put into a specific club?
So the way, and I think I shared a couple of meetings ago, we looked at how we can make the process, I want to say more transparent, not that it's hidden, but more advertised more. So the way Appendix B works is that depending on which club it is or co-curricular, you would need to make a request through typically the principal or your rep through the, each school is invited to have a rep on the Appendix B committee. There's job descriptions for each Appendix B position. So the first place, which I know there's been some confusion around where can I find those positions, all of that, and I believe, Debbie, you're working on that.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is making sure that the job description matches what's actually happening. And then the Appendix B committee meets before September 30th of every school year, of every year, and looks at increasing stipends or positions on the meeting, bringing charters forth to be placed on Appendix B, or sunsetting them for a period of time, and then we make recommendations to the board for that to happen. But it wouldn't go into effect until the budget passes for the next
Right.
year.
Right.
So there, just so, I don't know about the stuff that comes from the grant, but that's the process. So the first thing I would say is to see what the job description says.
And we did raise robotics a couple of years ago. We moved it up.
If the job description doesn't match what we as coaches are doing, who do we talk to update that?
So typically what's happened in the past is I have gotten emails directly from some of the co-curricular individuals, whoever's running it, or they would speak to the principal, and the principal has sent us or sent me information, and then that I do present to the committee when we meet.
Okay.
And when you're looking at job descriptions, and this is what we've said all along, is it's not the person that's doing it, it's what the club would do. So this is also a way for the job description. Job description is supposed to document what the co-curricular or the anything is doing. So think of it from that perspective, which is what you're doing. I'm just
The
saying that
requirements
for
of the job.
the requirements of the job. So regardless of who was in that position.
Okay.
So, and I'm saying that for everybody to understand, our adoring public online as well.
Right.
So.
Yes.
So I was in your position over in Winnisquam and felt the pain of the amount of hours that you put in versus what was offered as a club advisor. And so what I worked with the school, and I don't know where it went, but it was definitely headed in what I considered to be the correct direction, was that you're identifying yourself as a coach. And a coach is a coach. It needs to, that position needs to move into an actual, coaching position. When you start comparing hours from a baseball coach or a football coach or a basketball coach, it becomes far more equitable. With that, I don't know if within VEX Robotics, if the term coach was if that was by design, but it makes sense based on the hours. Me saying that it isn't going to do anything in the short term, but that's what I would suggest is trying to get that moved, and ultimately it's probably going to take a board decision, but it can work its way up through the chain of command on that.
VEX does see it as coaches because there's a website called coaches.vex.com.
Yep.
So
And there's, sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's a bunch of certifications, so I'm also working on all the certifications through VEX, through the coaching, through running an event. And it is more than just a club. Like, it is treated as a sport, but it's also STEM, so it's kind of a hybrid between a regular club and a sport. And the kids are also, the kids combined, we went from 11 to 13 active kids last season. We now have 18 kids and 5 teams. We're now to a point where we need to look for bus transportation to go to events.
So the only thing I would say, Mark, just to clarify in terms of how Appendix B operates, is it's not about whether it's a coach or whether it's the leader of a club. It's about the job responsibility. So I'm just, in terms of how Appendix B is operated, it's not been based on a title, it's been based on the job descriptions. So even if we changed the name to suppose, even if we changed the name to a coach, we would still want the job description to match the level of effort. So that's the only clarification I would make in terms of how Appendix B, because we're not, the way I understand it, and Appendix B is part of the contract, is that we're not valuing whether or not the term coach is more than someone else doing a club. It's about the amount of effort, the time, and intensity that's in the job description. So we want to make sure it reflects that. So that's the only thing I would clarify.
Any other questions?
I have a question, but it's not for you, I'm sorry. So if I heard this correctly, the money for the robotics coaches or club, it's a split between Appendix B and a grant?
So, no, so we have, and it's been in Appendix B for several years. And it was lower on the Appendix B, and years ago, a request came forward to move it up higher because of the additional duties and the requirements. So it was moved up in Appendix B. At the same time, when the state started having grants available, the people that were writing the grants were writing stipends into the grant for themselves as well, because the grant will offer stipends. So what ended up happening was they were getting stipends out of Appendix B and stipends out of the grants to try to help increase what they were getting paid. So the Appendix B stipend is totally separate. If the grant goes away, we would only pay the Appendix B stipend.
And right now, the stipend with the DOE grant is $2,000, and that is being split between 2 people for the full year.
That's the requirement. The grant will not let us go over $2,000. And that includes all fixed cost items. So we have to reduce the $2,000 because you still have to pay the FICA and the, if they're an employee who gets retirement, you have to pay the retirement plus we have the workers' comp. So they don't get the full $2,000. We back out some of that to cover the FICA and the workers' comp.
And then they would get whatever the stipend.
And then whatever is, they would split that,
Appendix
and
B.
then the Appendix B stipend, that gets split as well. And I believe for the high school robotics, it's 0.05% of the bachelor step 1.
It was $2,200 split between 2 people last season on top of the $2,000
Right.
from the DOE grant. So I received less than $2,200 after the taxes and everything that went through. I received less than that for the full year, for over 1,500 hours put in.
A lot of hours.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work because we've also built up the program. 2 years ago, we only had 3 kids and 2 teams. And now this year, we have 19 kids in the program and 5 teams. And that doesn't count IQ with Mr. Friend, who's running IQ. He knew nothing about it when he came in, and the person he thought was going to run the program has stepped back for health reasons. So I stepped in to help him since I knew about VEX, and so I'm learning IQ on top of doing the certifications for VEX. So I'm kind of doing double duty right now to help, because he had to start turning away kids from IQ because there's so much interest. There's over 30 kids right now trying to get into IQ, and we just don't have the capacity for it. And that doesn't count. IQ can run from 3rd grade to 8th grade. So right now, we don't even have anything set up for the elementary school students, and I'm not ready to battle that yet because I'm kind of busy.
So there's no season. It's not like a
Right.
baseball season or a volleyball season. It's a year-long,
Yeah.
year-long deal, because as soon as the national competitions are over, and many times they release the next challenge at the national competition, and that's where your competitive teams immediately start in the spring preparing for the following year.
So literally, we weren't even back from Worlds yet, and we had teams preparing for the next season. So we take off a couple of weeks here and there, but we're pretty much running almost year round.
So we appreciate that, and we can certainly have discussions about it, and we can ask for more information. I've not seen the job descriptions, but if the board wanted to take a look at that, I don't think there's anything that would prohibit it. So we could pull some of that together, just if we would like to do
I would
that.
like to see it, yes.
So, Deb, you can.
I think if we learned anything from last year, it's that robotics parents are passionate and like to get ahead of
So,
this as much as we can.
We certainly can. I just want to make sure we have all the information in front of us, which if we can get the job descriptions and see where it's at and those types of things. So.
Another suggestion, check with Freudenberg over in Northfield. They supported my program in Winnisquam significantly, and they helped out with the stipends as well.
They're one of our sponsors. We've received sponsorships from them before.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else from the public? Okay, so next up, we're gonna do a work session, and the way this work session typically goes is that this is our meeting with the administrators, and we go one by one through each of either the buildings or curriculum, buildings and grounds, those types of things. So we'll actually just go in order. So we'll be starting with BES then. And so at that time, we would ask questions about Ben's, the budget he's put together and Michael brought forth for us, and get clarification. All right. Ben, anything you'd like to share with us before?
The lights over here.
So
we're in the
on
budget
just a
rationale.
rationale sheet.
Kinda
We're
like
under
a teal.
rationale sheets, BES, which is the bottom, it's in the bottom right-hand corner. It says BES.
How many pages?
Yeah, 3 pages. So, Ben, anything you'd want to say to start out, or do you want us to just?
The only thing I'll share is what the teachers submitted to me was about $143,000. So I cut $23,900 out of the budget already before Michael and I were meeting on it. So there are some things we put off, some big ticket items. Furniture is the biggest thing. We put furniture off for years. We did get 3 sets of desks with during COVID with some grant money, but some of our furniture is in pretty bad shape. So we've gotten some stuff from LRCC, from Guilford, from Laconia in the past, but we get it used and it's worn out.
Questions from the board?
The artisan residence. We've had that before at BES, correct?
Yeah.
Did the PTO ever get involved with that?
Yes. I think they've been involved with it from the beginning, so we try to alternate visual arts and performing arts. Every other year we do something. The PTO's budget is not what it used to be. They spent quite a bit of money during COVID, so they can't continue to support the way they have been. The other issue with artists and residents is the programs are more expensive than they used to be. You know, they're about $5,000 roughly for a program, and they're $6,500, $7,000 now. So we'll still get some support from the PTO, but cost is up.
Other questions?
The replacement equipment and furniture, so the numbers that are in here, you mentioned you're putting things off. Is it keeping up with the wear and tear on the equipment, or is there a bow wave building?
No, I mean, I think we'll be okay. It's just, it's trying to balance the budget so that it's not big spikes, you know? So this year we put in a couple things that were more crucial, and we put off a couple things. The library tables and chairs is one of the things that we put off, our room tables and chairs, but they'll go another year.
Okay.
Probably a dumb question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. The whiteboards that you're speaking of, I think you have like the new displays in the middle of the room, and you've got a whiteboard on one side, and on the other side, there isn't one. But my impression is there's a desire to add one to offset, have more writing space. I'm assuming most or all of the teachers actually want that?
Yes, I've actually gone around and asked them just to make sure that, because if somebody didn't want it, I wouldn't put it up, but they're magnetic whiteboards too, so they use it for all their foundations materials as part of our literacy program. All that stuff goes up in the whiteboards as well. So the plan was to spread that over years too, but obviously we got all the interactive TVs replaced at once.
Under the purchase services for guidance, there's an $800 that is added in. I was just wondering what that was for.
Yeah, that's for a karate program. We have a local businessman who comes in and does karate programs at a pretty good rate.
Do you have, our kindergarten play centers in here twice?
No, I think there's some equipment in there and some furniture under there. So it's just classification of the materials.
Okay.
Some of the stuff's equipment, some's furniture.
And is it that we, because play-based kindergarten's been around for many years, so I'm assuming this is to replace materials, or are we enhancing play-based, like what?
Some of it's replacement, but our kindergarten team has put in a lot of work with Silas over the last 3 or 4 years, studying and growing the play-based component of kindergarten.
Okay.
Which kind of took a back seat with all the common course.
I got it. Other questions?
Question.
Go ahead.
For the field trips, it's quite a cut, so I'm just wondering what you're cutting out for field trips.
Yeah, I just reduced the bus cost. The field trips that the groups are taking right now, the different grade levels aren't as long as, we're not traveling as far as we used to be, so I just looked at our actuals over the last several years actually, and that'll be a tight number, but it'll be a good number.
Okay.
In the line for the supplies and printing materials, can you just give a quick overview of what that is?
Do you in the 1100 function, Mark?
No, 10.
Which one, Mark?
Supplies and printed materials.
10, 1100, 5, 6, 10? It's on page 1?
Yes.
Okay.
Supplies and printed materials are 2 different accounts. So we have general supplies, 5610-17000. That's the
Yeah.
general school supplies, and each grade level buys supplies out of that.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm on the 42,464 for cost. I'm assuming that, it's classroom workbooks and.
Oh, I got
It's
you,
the
the whole
subtotal.
subtotal, I
Oh,
got you.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
That's for all the lines, Mark.
Yeah, so there
That's
are,
all the lines
all of our
together.
general school supplies are in that. Any specific supplies that classroom teachers have ordered, so it could be a specialist, it could be a classroom teacher, everything that they've ordered for supplies. Printed media, so that's anything that comes pre-printed, workbooks, scholastic news, things like that.
Yeah, good.
So everything total, the overall budget increase for this year is $16,212.
Which is mostly coming from furniture.
So between furniture and printed supplies, that doubles up a lot.
Yeah, it's mostly furniture. Finished the whiteboards, so that's a little bit of an increase over last year, and then the artisan residence program.
Other questions for Ben? Seeing none, I'm gonna move on, so. Okay. Mr. Pope,
Good evening.
good evening. Anything you'd like to say before?
I think I would echo what Ben said. You know, if you look at the budget, it's pretty balanced in terms of comparisons to last year, but we've seen an increase in furniture just for the same reasons. You know, specifically, we're in really dire need of replacement classroom chairs. We got mostly tables with some COVID money and a few chairs, but we have quite a few chairs that need to be replaced. And if you've done some research on getting replacement furniture, it's not cheap anymore. And to include the shipping piece on it, which is pretty significant right now. So my budget's mostly the increase comes from that furniture, you know, to support general classrooms for mostly chairs, as well as our STEM program, which is in pretty desperate need of some work tables and things like that. The current tables that they're using right now are 30 to 40 years old, and they're on top. They're basically mounted to the top of old metal lockers. So not only are they, you know, some sharp edges and things, but they also have caused some damage to the floor and things like that. So we're trying to eliminate that.
Questions for Mr. Pope?
I have just a general question.
Yeah.
So I know like BES, BMS, a lot of furniture replacements and that. Is that because I think in the past that always seems to be the thing that gets cut? So needing to.
That is correct.
Yeah, okay.
You know, in the past, we've had I'll speak for the middle school, we've had a furniture replacement cycle. So I would say pre-COVID, you know, we would budget a certain amount. We'd have a document that we know kind of like a 5-year plan. You know, so we stuck to that pretty good. So we're in really good shape and things. And then I would say the last couple of years, that's been the piece that's been reduced in our budgets, for sure.
Part of that was mitigated, at least at the high school, obviously with the use of some of the ESSER funds, so we could get some different furniture, but, you know, we're now getting to 4 or 5 years ago that those were utilized and added some things, and I know we're not at the high school yet, but it's an increase in our budget as well. We're just getting to a point that some of the old furniture is just wearing out, and it's not necessarily the things that we bought then, but it was the things that we didn't replace at that point that are just now 10 years old, and a desk that is 10 years old, those little wire things underneath, they wear out.
So in that regard, and thinking about the buildings as well, is there a look ahead over like probably 5 years as far as you see in the future, where you go, here's what I've typically replaced, here's what we forecast is probably going to be needed? Because I guess what I applaud everybody for trying to keep the budgets. Surely appreciate that as paying the taxes, but on the same token, you know, does the board want to see at some point, not necessarily during the budget cycle, but look, here's really what we're looking at over the next 5 years of building wear and tear, and furniture wear and tear, and whatever else fits in that category. Because I'm thinking last year, you know, it was roofs, so some big numbers, and they are what they are. It's just the board may choose when they see that whole picture to, you know, authorize some funding, or what you said, a regular replacement program. Does it make sense?
I was going to ask the same question, because, I mean, we do that for sports uniforms, I believe. We do that for a lot of computer, electronic items, so I think it would be helpful to
And
have
the
a
other thing is, if you have that look ahead, you could say, well, I see it coming. Maybe we make a decision a year earlier and do competitive building with a bulk buy, so it could actually help reduce the cost.
So the music department is looking to purchase new chorus risers, and that's mentioned in BES and CES, that it's split between the four, but I wasn't able to find that in BHS or in BMS. I'm assuming that's for a reason.
Yeah, actually, it's a good question. We just talked about this the other day as a group, so the idea was to get a set of risers that we could kind of move around the district and things. So we have a set of risers that's in really good shape, so we don't need to purchase a new set of risers. It's kind of where we're at up in the
Okay.
school.
So it's not actually one section of course risers per music department, which is the note that's under CES.
Say that again?
So the note under CES says requesting one section of chorus risers per music department, but it's actually just 2 music departments.
I think you mean per the music department in the school? Is that what you mean? That's how I read it, Kate.
Okay.
So I read it as the music department was requesting risers, one set of risers for CES.
So the original plan
Oh.
was brought forth to me from my music teacher, and she explained that her understanding was that each school would be requesting one section that could then be put together and shared among the schools, because the risers at each site, at least at the 2 elementary and middle schools, were not in very good shape and very old. So if they changed that because of their differing needs, that might be what happened.
My understanding, our risers are in fine shape. They didn't
Okay.
even approach me about purchasing risers for the middle school.
Which is why it's not in your budget.
Correct.
Okay, so talking in my music department at the high school, I thought it was just the cost was being split between the 4, and it was one, like it was because the risers get used at all the schools. That was why they were doing it, not that they were buying a separate set for each school.
So currently, each school has their own set. What we have at CES is 30-plus years old.
Yeah.
And it's safe for students to use. The safety factor is the setting up and taking down of it. It's really unsafe for the custodians. And so I tasked my music teacher to talk with the other music teachers about a solution. And what she came back to me with was that each school would be ordering a set of one that could be brought together and shared.
Yeah.
And so that's what we put in our budget. It sounds like the music teachers might have had some changes that they would fill us in on
Yeah.
once,
Okay.
after I put that note in.
Okay.
So will all your pieces connect to Mr. Pope's pieces?
Question.
What
I
we're
doubt
gonna-
it.
Not necessarily.
I'm gonna suggest that we look into the
Thank you.
riser situation.
Thank you. This is unclear.
Michael, when you look at that, the other thing that comes to mind, I don't know how much these things are, but taking them down and moving them around is wear and tear, and then there's a labor paying to do it, so I don't know if it makes sense to
Yeah, if you have to go to
do
each
that.
school to get a piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. that makes sense.
Well, the way it was rolled out to me was that they would be housed at one place, and then a school could request them when they needed them. We also have the storage factor that can be a challenge.
Yeah,
Right, that's-
okay, so there's other considerations, I'm
Right.
just saying
We
that.
kind of do that, do we buy like a set of chairs or something that kind of get moved around the district as
It's the same
a
idea,
trailer for that?
yes.
Because no school had enough room to store all the chairs, but they all have needs at different times of the year.
Right, so it's the exact same idea.
Same idea.
And it would allow us to get what we needed, but at a reasonable cost. But we need to go back and find out what happened to the plan, because the original plan, as rolled out to me, was each school purchasing a section.
We'll look into it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pope, under repair and maintenance for Office of the Principal, our actual for '23 was 3,100. Our budget for this year is 1,000, and your request is for 4,000. Can you?
That's a request that Debbie puts in.
For copier use.
So why did you
So
go
I'm
down?
not sure why it was only 1,000 this year, because they've never paid just $1,000 for copier
Okay,
use.
so that's why it
Right.
flagged for me?
Yeah.
So that is copier use, so that's
It's
actually
the
what
cost
it
per
is.
copy and the ink that they use.
Okay.
It's
Nobody
okay.
plays around with my budget.
That 2410
I keep you
is for
from getting in
copies.
trouble.
Debbie, that 2410 is for copies?
The 2410 function is the office of the principal.
Yep.
And the $4,000 for that repair and maintenance is the cost that we have to pay for the cost per copy and the ink that gets used in the copiers.
Why do we put that under repair and maintenance?
It's a maintenance contract.
Oh.
I think the question should be, why should you put it on the principal?
Right, that's actually, you're right. Because it did flag for me because it was principal. I'm like, geez.
Well, they're the
what
ones
did
that are
you
in charge of who makes copies, so.
Oh. Other questions? Okay, VHS.
Hi.
Hi.
So you're gonna see a lot of similar types of increases in hours, related to replacement furniture. You're also gonna see some references to the NEASC accreditation process in a few of the different lines. That is coming up. Our decennial visit is scheduled for 2027. So we've got a few years away, but anybody who has been on the board during a decennial visit process, your decennial visit starts about 3 years prior to the committee actually coming. So this is a big year for us to start getting our ducks in a row on that, taking some steps forward. And there's also been some lines that represent some bigger numbers in some of our courses. You're going to see print media requests, such as in foreign language, where it's a good problem to have. We've got more students who are trying to take upper level courses, and we are short on AP level materials, French 5 and things like that. AP history courses, we're short on textbooks and things like that. So the nice thing is we've got kids who are taking higher level courses, but it's higher numbers than we've had in a very long time. So it's things like that that are kind of scattered throughout. Again, furniture's a big one.
I did have a question which relates to something you just said.
Sure.
When we budget, say, for this year, and we have more in an AP history class, even though we didn't budget for it, my hope would be that the students are getting the books that are, I know the answer to the question, Kate, thank you for shaking your head. And I'm concerned if they're not, because I'd rather that come to Michael, because students shouldn't be without books, to be blunt.
So we looked for a variety of routes, and actually Silas came in and has helped us out with that as well, to try to order some resources that would compensate for that. I understand what you're saying.
I missed you. Was that a head and
I'm
water?
saying-
I missed it.
My sister's in that class,
Yes.
so I know about what happens.
So I guess what I'm asking is if we're gonna approve a budget, whatever that budget, it actually would be for any of the schools. It's my belief, students should have what they need. So if they start the first day of school, or actually you know how many is enrolled in the class. I don't know the process, but I would think somebody needs to go to Michael, because if there are not books for the students in the class, like,
And we're returning money
yeah,
to
so
taxpayers every year. So
I'm
it's like-
really concerned about that. So as we look at this, I obviously support making sure we have it. That being said, I'm not okay.
So I wouldn't be as well, particularly if a request comes forward for resources that students need and it's not in the budget, we're gonna make it work. If kids need
Correct.
books in an AP course, we're gonna get them for them. So it makes it across my desk, and Debbie can attest to that. If the request comes through our system, Debbie's gonna say there's not enough money in the budget, she's gonna come to me and I'm gonna say,
Find it.
let's get it, because kids need books, so, right?
Yeah, I always reach back and say, what is this for? And if they say it's textbooks, that's always been a given.
So,
Okay, thank you. Because I know there are more, which is a great problem to have, so.
So on AP, it's been a long time for me, but it seems like you were able, or back when I was that age, that you took a test to see if you get college credit. Is that still the case? And
It's offered.
Is there a budget that covers that so the students don't have to pay it out of pocket?
No, that's something that a student has to elect.
Okay.
The cost is pretty nominal.
Nominal.
You know, comparatively to a college course.
How about for families that are kind of in desperate straits or the homeless kids?
I think we would do anything we could to make that work.
Okay.
Like,
There's a
I would not-
process
Yeah.
to request.
We have monies that we can access through that. That's never been an issue. The bigger issue, honestly, is we have a number of AP, or students who take the AP course and then elect to not take the test.
Yeah.
For any variety of reasons. But they, they still can get credit for the class, and they do everything except the test.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's disappointing, but it counts toward the graduation credit, so
Correct.
they're still learning. So-
Correct. And it's a high-level course.
Right.
Obviously, it pushes the students hard. It just happens for, we have all kinds of different reasons as to why a student elects to not do it, but I don't think it's very often that it's because of a financial burden.
Is that program offer online, so if you don't have a teacher in a particular area, you can take it online?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's covered in the budget, or does the student have to pick up that cost?
A lot of those courses we can get for free.
Oh,
actually.
okay.
We do have a policy at the high school that we expect a student, if they can get it into their schedule and it's something that we offer,
Yeah.
that we expect them to take it with us.
Okay.
But, if a student wanted to take AP Mandarin,
Mhm.
we don't have that. So we would work with that student to take, however many courses it would take to get up to that level if they really want to pursue it.
Okay.
So that's always been the approach that we've had.
It's sort of a question and also sort of a note. So under the supplies for music, there's $1,000 that is noted to be for dance fitness. I'm in that dance fitness class, and I talked to Ms. Fontaine about it. That's actually not what she wants that money for. It's supposed to be for specifically music supplies for guitar strings, batteries, music books, ensemble music, etc. Is what
Yeah, there was
she informed
some
me.
conversation about it. So all of those courses that Kate just alluded to are taught by Ms. Fontaine. That's part of her arrangement, her schedule. So if it's allocated for supplies, like it could be used for those courses.
Okay, so it's not
Thus far,
for
we've
dance
never
fitness.
had any budget for dance fitness, but
Right.
we've offered it. So
So dance fitness is a music class?
it's taught by a music teacher, and it's utilized, so it's not a PE course, it's an elective course.
So anyway, the money's not actually for dance fitness, it's for music supplies. So we're not sure why it's under there as dance fitness. We've got new supplies for dance fitness the past 2 years, but she is not looking for any new supplies this year, but she does need other stuff.
So most of her stuff has typically been budgeted in the Belmont High School band account. So that's where with the guitar, strings and things like that would be.
Okay,
And that's 2 lines above.
Okay, the only reason I was saying this is because I asked her, I brought my budget book to school and asked her about it. Because I was curious, because I was like, why are we requesting this new stuff? And she told me that she did not request dance fitness money, and that she requested an extra $1,000 for that stuff.
So potentially we could move that $1,000 up into the supplies VHS band.
Well, because
Because that
it's
was-
not band stuff.
That was a new line
Right.
that we established in here specifically to that, so.
My concern with doing that is then, a course like dance fitness, there is zero budget.
Right.
So if there comes to be, like, a music course, I would still consider guitar to be a music course, and it's not band. It's not the band
Right.
class. So I think supplies music is the more flexible place to have that. And that's not, band is not the only course that she teaches.
So I
It
was
would be, I mean, if we're just looking at moving that $1,000 up to the, to move it, there would still be a $1,000 request for dance fitness. Or am I
No.
not looking at that right?
Or you
No,
have
I
it as
think-
music supplies. You could have just put supplies, $1,000.
I think bottom line is
Why put the
Cross
dance
out
as a
for new
business?
strike through the
courses.
note.
Yeah.
And it's all taken care of.
Transparent about it. Come on.
Yeah.
Strike through the note.
So the calculators, Mr. Finch,
Yeah.
Not exact question.
are, right now, students are providing them themselves?
No, we have some, but we filled our math department. We've got more courses that are running concurrently, and that's a great problem to have, but now we're getting to a point where they're kind of figuring out, you know, lesson planning and things like that to have enough for courses at any one time. And some, you know, those don't last forever, they're used almost every day.
Oh, I don't have a problem, I had to buy
Yeah,
one
I'm
for
just
each of
questioning
my
why,
kids,
why are we
so.
supplying calculators, especially expensive calculators?
Pocket calculators.
I don't want a kid to have to use it.
Right.
To have to buy it, I do not want a student to have to buy equipment to take a course.
They don't have to. I mean, most of us learned how to graph on paper if needed. The calculator makes it faster.
But they
Well,
use those
wait.
calculators every day.
We use them.
That's what higher level
Right.
classes, we need extra functions.
Yeah.
I think they can work, they were even invented when
But
was-
how many is this, I mean, I think, I don't want someone to have to pay for it either, but, how many will that get us?
I believe it was 12. I'd have to look back at the.
Yeah, it would be about, because they roughly are $100.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I'm thinking about your comment on a different level. I'm trying to think through algebra and all that stuff. If you're using a calculator, you really learning the underlying principles.
Well, we're
That's not what
talking
the calculators
calculus.
are for. It's like calculus statistics, you need different functions.
Oh,
It's not
yeah,
for
that's
adding
Right,
and
we're not
subtracting.
talking algebra.
Well, I'm just going on last year, we're teaching courses. Okay,
Well, we have,
good.
but that's what, you're talking everything from statistics to,
Advanced math.
Pre-calculus and
I mean,
calculus,
there's a variety of courses.
right.
They don't figure out longhand anymore.
So if parents, some parents buy them, do they have the opportunity to donate them back
We're
to
gonna bring
the
up our
school
whole,
when their kids done?
everybody's gonna have their own history of their TI.
Yeah, so,
I'm gonna date myself, my TI.
It's not something you really keep around for.
About an 89.
so, hold on, we got lots of conversation. One question, Randy, you had to.
I
Mr.
asked
Finch.
if some parents opt to buy these calculators for their kids, are they given the opportunity if they want to donate it back when their child's
If somebody wanted to do that, I don't think we would say no, but I also feel really uncomfortable asking, hey, thanks for buying that, can we have it now that you are no longer a student at Belmont High School?
And some use it in college. So, but, yeah,
Why the big jump in social studies? Just curious.
Where?
Is that the printed
Line are you on?
It's like the third line down on that second page. If you go up from the calculators, you go from 100 to 0 to 4,300.
That's the printed media. So a part of that is making sure that we have all the textbooks that are required. If we didn't find a way to get some of those AP textbooks, you know, we need a place to put that, and we needed to make sure that it was in the budget this year. Last year, the department didn't request nearly as much.
Is it like just in between like edition cycles, it went from use the 7th edition for a couple of years, now the
Yeah.
8th edition is out?
Yeah, it's.
We have to replace
They
all
change
those.
every couple of years, or probably every 6 months or so, because companies always want you to buy the newest.
Of course they do.
So when we're getting new textbooks, I say this every year, but I actually learned I was saying the wrong question. We need to make sure there are digital copies available for those who need accessibility. So I know there are some, so I'm looking at Silas because it's gonna be, my concern is for students who, like my daughter, because she allows me to use this, who need a digital copy and are not able to access. So I know I keep asking, most times I ask the question, are they accessible? But actually the term I need to say is we need to make sure we have digital copies for these students.
That actually wouldn't be under print media though, that would be under electronic info. So it gets really weird sometimes when we get a quote from one of these companies because we have to ask them to disaggregate, you know, all of these different things to put them in different lines.
So I do care where it goes, that's not what I
Yeah.
mean. I just wanna make sure
Sure.
that we're seeing it, because sometimes the textbooks come also with a digital
Yeah.
copy.
Yeah.
So I just wanna make sure we have that,
Yeah.
because students who don't have individual education programs, who still need access, can't get certain files.
Yeah, I'm confident that it would fall into the same situation that Michael and Debbie were talking about, that if a student has a need, then we're gonna figure it out.
And are we we need more marching snares because we have more percussion people.
They're just falling apart.
They're falling apart.
Yeah.
Okay, it helps me to know, like, why, because I certainly want to make sure. I didn't know if we, like, doubled our percussion and, but knowing they're falling apart,
Yeah.
helpful.
And actually, Lauren has talked to Silas, because Silas is a musician, he's a percussionist himself, trying to find the best deals on something
Yep.
like that, whether
Perfect.
it's used or new, or, whatever it is we can get.
Okay.
Could you explain what your vision is when you say display for a lobby area?
Yep.
As current display space is insufficient?
Yep. So if you go into the lobby at VHS, the first display case that you see, and Kate knows about this one for sure, it is piled up with athletic awards, ribbons from 6th place in 1985. It's long ago type of stuff. As part of the school's effort to maintain and honor the history of the school, brass is one group, but there's others who want to be involved as well, including the Belmont Historical Society. They would like to contribute to a history of the school / history of the town that would exhibit. We currently use all of those displays either for student work or athletic awards. There just isn't much, there isn't space. So whether it's working with Cayman to move those awards and maybe kind of update that a little bit into a new area and have it in that, and the history project can go where those current displays and plaques and things like that are. Or vice versa. We just don't have enough space in there to pay homage to things that we would like to really honor.
So is this being split? Like, are other people contributing, like you said, the Historical Society for the
No,
cost of it?
they want to contribute to, the artifacts that go into it, but more, I would think that we would be working towards supplying the actual framing and display case.
Okay.
But we've had them come in before and, talked about old designs of things, and, I think they'd be very much on board in contributing to the artifacts ones.
Thank you. Other questions?
2,400 at the bottom of page 2. Graphic arts is unable to program from a Chromebook. Request for $3,400, $2,400 increase. Is that for a computer?
Yeah.
Single?
A portable device, yeah. So right now, Nancy Bordeaux is our graphic arts teacher. She was not here when the Chromebook, overlap into all the teachers happened. But we can't run the programs that we have on our in our graphic arts program on a Chromebook. Like, it literally just doesn't work. That's why they tried to, a couple of years ago, utilize almost like a network hub at the SAU, and the computers would remotely tap in to that. It was an absolute disaster. There was connectivity issues every day. Kids had to log in 15 different ways. It was awful. So eventually, Jason worked with us to get the towers back into that lab, or that computer lab. But that means that if Nancy is going to be doing anything to access these for her grading, to create exemplars or anything like that, she has to stay. And if you ever, she's got a pretty cool car. So if you ever
But the
drive
lab
by, you'll see
itself
it there at 5 o'clock.
has PCs and
As desktops, yeah, but there is no laptop. Like,
Right.
I'm trying to work with her to get a portable device so that she can do her work, not having to stay until 6 o'clock at night. She has a Chromebook, it's just not sufficient for what her course does.
So this is just for a teacher machine?
Correct.
Not for student use?
Correct, it would be specific to that position.
I'm sorry, which line item was that?
Right here.
How much is
That
it?
is 10, 1100, 57, 35, 3, 10, 10.
That's a heck of a computer.
Second to last on the second page.
That's for one computer?
For one laptop.
Yeah. Well, just to put it in perspective, I bought a top-of-the-line Lenovo, $1,700. It has a huge amount of capacity and capability. So I'm not sure for $3,400. I'm not questioning the need for the computer, I'm
The
questioning.
increase is 234 from 1,000. Replacement equipment still happens in that room. You know, she has big equipment, she's got printers, she's got copiers, you know, all these different things.
So it's not a single computer?
The 2,400, the consideration is having that as like the flexibility to get that device. The $1,000 that was there previously would be allocated as it normally is to replace the equipment that's in the classroom. So the increase is really for that specific reason.
So the 2,400 is more.
Right, that's,
the line.
that was the thought. So she leveled it in terms of classroom equipment at the 1,000.
Well, my only point is,
So if you budget 2,400 and she finds a $1,700 laptop, what happens to the $700 that's budgeted?
It remains in the budget, and then at the end of the year, it will be reallocated back to the.
where I was going with this, a few $100 here or there, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to keep what you're saying. I'm more of the lines of, what do you have for advice when you need to go buy new digital equipment, okay? One of my son-in-laws is a professional in the gaming industry and stuff, and I always tag him when I want something, but. So, it's not so much the cost, it's the capability and thinking about what's coming down the road. You know, some of this stuff lasts for quite a while if you buy it with enough capability up front, and it can handle larger programs that come to play. So is there?
Yeah, even at home, I've always been a believer in don't buy, when it comes to technology or, you know, appliances, you don't get exactly what you're looking for today, you get something and then a little bit more.
Yeah, so do you have teachers making individual decisions, or have you got somebody that's got a serious background?
Yeah. This request is from Nancy Bordeaux.
No,
Who's
I
our graphic arts teacher, so that is,
I
she
think this is a special program. I don't think all the teachers.
No, what I'm saying is, when you're gonna go buy hardware, I don't know what her skill level is in saying, look, somebody wants to sell me this thing, it tells me it runs this program. On the other hand, there's other hardware out there that can run the program, and it's still expensive.
Yep.
But on the other hand, it has the capability to handle rapid growth in programs. You know, like the Lenovo I just mentioned, I overbought, but every other so years when the stuff I'm doing, some other program is out.
Yeah, our tech team is getting very involved in the evolution of that room. So
Okay.
I would have no problem, you know, we were shorthanded there, but no
Okay.
problem with her working with somebody in that department as well.
So
All right,
the process, Jay, we usually go through is if a teacher's asking for a specific piece of equipment,
Yeah.
particularly when it's technology,
Yeah.
we vet it through our tech department
That's
to
my
make sure it's
question.
capable of, well, first of all, is it capable to work within our network?
Right.
But also, is it exactly what that teacher needs? And usually we'll rely on, I mean, in this case, we rely on Nancy specifically because she knows what she needs.
Right.
But we make sure it's compatible, and we make sure that it's the right piece of equipment for our tech department.
Is the buy big enough on a year-to-year basis across the district for computerized equipment? Go get like a contract with a bill or somebody, like companies do?
Like a state bid kind of thing?
So what we do for our large purchases of technology, particularly our Chromebooks, we put those out to bid for our lease program.
Yeah, I remember the Chromebook discussion from last year.
That's really our big purchases when it comes to tech.
Okay, so there's not enough volume on the other stuff?
No.
Other questions?
I had a question about, okay, there's money budgeted for guest speakers at the top of the first page, and then there's also money budgeted for special assemblies on the third page, and I was just wondering what the difference is between the two things.
Yeah, actually, I should have put a different note for the purchase services, because that's not necessarily like guest speakers and things like that. That's
Okay.
more, if you hire somebody in who's going to, whether it's a repair or something specific that you need done. The special assemblies is really more guest speakers.
Okay.
I was just missing a bit.
Bottom of page 4, the printing VHS
Yep.
principle, the signage, can you just clarify?
Sure. If you've ever gone to the middle school, there's a few things that are specific to what I was thinking. If you go to the middle school, you see those signs on the telephone poles themselves, the light poles. our campus is beautiful. I think our parking lot area could use a good amount of sprucing up. I'd like to do some outdoor work. One of the things that, I allude to the NEASC process there as well, one of the things that NEASC really wants is, you know, continuity and consistency around the building. Oftentimes that comes in, you know, things that are printed and they're displayed around the building, and belief statements, and we're also going to be working on portrait of a graduate, portrait of a learner, which is something that would actually involve, you know, K to 12 and students and parents. It's a big process to develop that for a district, but because NEASC is specifically only a high school accreditation system, printing those things and distributing it to the other buildings, I think would be most appropriate coming out of that line, even if it's something that we share as a Shaker Regional School District learner is this. But things like that, you know, NEASC doesn't like to say that they are an expensive process, but they are a very expensive process.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mark, you said that was your question, but did you have anything else with that? As well?
No, I was just kind of curious what the, you know, what they're looking for signage and that type of thing. Looking for a general,
Sure.
just a general description.
Yeah, and just the other day, we spent some of the printing line because we're getting new, you know, parking stickers for faculty, staff, and students. You know, we haven't had those available, and we don't have as many as we need, so, you know, it's little things like that that come up. Adds up fast, though.
Can you talk about field trips? Just kind of curious what they entail, or quantity, or quality, or that type of thing?
Yeah, it depends. We had a teacher today go to a wastewater facility. When we do, you know, field trips, it's oftentimes course specific, but we also have teachers who try to double up oftentimes to try to see like what curricular connections, you know, one trip could make between multiple classes. Miss Angwin just brought a pretty large group down to Boston for the Body Works exhibit, and that was both science and, you know, a variety of different courses that they were trying to study with that. So it's curricular based, you know, that's why it's a field trip. But one of the difficult things is obviously the transportation costs continue to go up and up and up, and a lot of the money that comes out of that is really trying to help our teachers bring kids to do cool stuff and pay for the transportation to get there.
So you'd say a bulk of that request is transportation? If
In terms of what I've seen in terms of the actuals, yeah, I mean, that's where the majority of the money goes, and it's not close.
The vocational education, remember this discussion from last year? These are where the kids go to some local community colleges.
Either the Hewitt Center or the Municipal Agriculture.
How is it decided what curriculum is offered that the school's going to participate? Is that done at the state level, or is that your decision?
In terms of what's offered at the Hewitt?
Well, I mean, so the idea of going to the vocational school is hopefully it translates to, you know, non-college job, or maybe later on a job that does not require a college degree, let's put it that way. And still good
I'm
earning
going to back out
potential,
a little
right?
bit. The Hewitt Center, and I hate to cut you off, but the Hewitt Center has redesigned themselves and redeveloped themselves tremendously over the years. And there are some very advanced courses there for medical sciences and engineering and things like that that get kids started. But it's the most impressive thing that place has done, and that CTE centers have done in the last few years, is diversify their offerings.
What I wanted to rephrase what I said, so it didn't sound quite so curious. What I meant was, with what they're offering, how is it decided with what they're offering supports local industry? Is that done at the state level?
I can answer this, Matt.
Yeah.
So we have what's known as a regional advisory board for the Hewitt Center, and all career technical centers have a advisory board. And sitting on that board are local businesses and industry leaders that help us make those decisions. I sit on the board as well, principals do, and school board members, and we find out what specifically is needed in local industries and businesses, and courses could be developed based on that need. So we do have those local business leaders around, and CTE centers offer different offerings, particularly that are specific to local industry. But more importantly, our students have access to any program that a CTE center offers that our Hewitt, which is our receiving center, doesn't offer. So we have students that go to Concord, we have students that go to Winnisquam and Hewitt. So it's really impressive what they've done.
So I remember when you talked about that, you said the disappointing thing was students wouldn't necessarily, either didn't finish or somehow it wasn't necessarily utilized at the same rate you were looking for.
Well, there are years that the Hewitt runs 2-year programs.
Yeah.
So there's, Auto Tech 1, Auto Tech 2.
Okay.
Sometimes just the Hewitt's in the same position as any other educational environment where sometimes they can't fill a position or, they only have so many spots.
No, what I meant at the student level.
Yeah.
I forget exactly what the deal was. I think, Michael, you were saying, or maybe it was you, Mr. Finch, that students would get started on the program, but they wouldn't finish it.
It's rare.
Oh, it's rare.
It's rare.
Okay, well, then never mind on my question.
And we increased it last year, because this is the tuition, correct?
Whereas really going, whereas really going is there any kind of mentorship? These folks, when they're like sophomores or something, they really don't really have any idea about what their, the industries are like. So is there any kind of mentorship? Either being partnered up with a local business or something where they kind of get moved along and excited is why they're taking the courses at the same time.
We might have also seen in the personnel listing, they're looking to increase the amount of time that our school of work coordinator is in our building. When they get to the Hewitt, they have those types of individuals and relationships between Hewitt staff and the students.
Okay.
And they build portfolios and they really work toward getting kids meet these graduation requirements and get them ready for the workplace. Freshman and sophomore years, we have to do it in-house, and that's one of the primary reasons that I want to expand that position.
And is that, I know it's not strictly budget, but this is kind of near and dear to my heart, does that lead to either some kind of an internship as part of the Hewitt program with companies and maybe help with job placements?
Not necessarily involved with the Hewitt, but it can get people out into the community, it gets kids out in the community, and can also be credit bearing. Our school career coordinator oftentimes works with Silas to develop experience-specific standards that a student works toward, and they can be out in that environment. We have a student who's finishing hers up right now. She worked for the Laconia Daily Sun, because she wants to be, a newspaper writer. She wants to get in there. And she's put a whole lot of time and effort into that. So it is experiential.
And we go as far down as the middle school, particularly every year, we have a very large career fair, correct, Mr. Pope? Where there are a lot of local businesses and vendors and community members that come in to really highlight what is offered, particularly for employment outside of high school or even during high school.
Okay. One last question, I'll get off this topic. So,
Because I'm going to move you along.
no, move me along, I'll ask you when we're done. Sorry.
I have one other.
Yep.
So, kind of got the wheels turning when we talked about field trips and all that stuff, and I remember very kind of was eye-opening last week where we heard about the enormous jump in transportation costs that are going to be coming. Do you think realistically increasing it $200 on this one, or even some of the cuts I saw, I feel like we're already facing huge transportation jumps, but it almost feels like it's not reflected. Like if you're asking for a $200 jump, but really they're going to increase $3,000 or $4,000, do you feel that that's sufficient, or even with the field trip transportation budget cuts?
So I can answer that as well. So if you look at, it's showing a $200 increase, but we're asking for the $11,000. And we go back and we look at what we actually spent in 22-23, which is that actual line of $5,400. So we feel that the $11,000, based on what we spent last year, should cover that
Those big
increase.
jumps. Okay, I just didn't want you guys to.
That's a good question.
I don't think, I don't think we'd be pushing too hard. If you're in with a 20.5% consideration, that would still cover it if you just did the math on that. So
Okay.
I think we're okay. I think
Didn't want you
teachers.
to-
Good question.
No, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I think teachers are more actively looking to put trips together. If you looked at the principal's report from last week, we had a bunch of them. Our school, the career coordinator, actually has her own line. So, she's bringing kids to job sites and things like that. That's not even coming out of the field trip line, so it's more specific.
Any other questions for Mr. Finch? Okay. Karen,
Any questions?
I do.
Okay.
So first of all, I commend you on being the only one to have a decrease in your total budget.
Until
However-
you see my personnel request.
However-
Yeah, exactly.
It is still almost 100,000 higher than it was 2 years ago. And looking at your overall cost, your budget is a little over 20,000 higher than what BES has. So I see that the bulk of that came last year from the office of the principal, and I remember we did like a bunch of furniture and all this other stuff. But can you just refresh my memory as to why your budget would be higher than theirs?
And I apologize, those subtotals are incorrect in the 2,400, so that is misleading at the bottom. It carried over all of the principals, so that is
Okay, because I was like, I would
Right.
have asked last year why it was like
Yeah.
that, and I didn't remember.
Yeah, no, the subtotals in the 2410 carried forward all the other 2410s for the other schools. So if you look, the 2410 is not an 88,376 request, it's actually 7,434. If you look at the office of the principal.
Yeah.
So it's actually down $510 over this year, from this year's budget, so.
So what is the actual total budget for
It
CES?
would be. So it's the request for the total Canterbury is $60,139, and this year's request are $70,563 is this year's budget.
So where are those lines going? So one of them's gonna be the 2410, office of the principal?
Yeah, it's the 2410 Office of the Principal that's, that whole section is off.
Right.
The Office of the Principal, the fiscal year '24 budget is $7,944 total. The request is $7,434 total.
So Debbie, you'll,
I'll do new sheets and get those out to you, yeah.
So the fiscal year '24 total budget
It's $70,563.
Okay. And then the.
The request is
60,000.
$60,139. So overall, Canterbury is down $10,424. And specifically, that's because of the library furniture.
Yep.
Cross out 142 and 141.
I think you're back.
Does this impact the overall budget
No,
summary?
no,
Okay, so that's-
no. So I take the whole budget and then divide it up into the
Down
different rationale sheets.
So they're down 10,000.
They're down $10,424.
Good catch, Randy.
424.
I was like, I'm surprised I didn't ask that last
Yeah.
year.
Why she went up $100,000 in the office of the
I
principal?
thought the furniture was like 36.
Like, wow.
You should check out my office.
Yeah. Questions?
Yeah, right.
The
The
live-
diamond
the live
necklace.
tiger.
So nothing is needed for guidance?
So the program that we bring from Plymouth State University, Tiger, they
Oh.
come every other year.
All right.
So next year you'll see an increase of 800. or so.
Yeah.
But next year, it's at 0, because they came to see us this fall.
Right.
And I will find out about the music risers.
Yeah. Yeah. Michael's got that.
So you're looking to replace the other ones, it's not, that's just to get wing.
Yeah, so they're very large, very heavy. Once they're set up, the kids can safely use them, but it's the setup and takedown. The way it was described to me by the custodian is that there's a really easy chance for their hand to get stuck in the mechanism that opens everything up or closes it back up. And we've had concerns about injury.
That's the next stage.
No, it's the risers.
Not the stage.
It's not the stage, it's the risers. And they're very heavy and 30-plus years old. Our stage is fine.
When do the risers get used?
They get used throughout the school year, but mainly our music concerts.
Okay, I was just trying to remember because I don't ever remember using them, but so
I don't
that was a
either.
few years ago, so.
Yeah.
We just always use the stage.
Correct. I mean, that's what I remember.
The
We used
holiday
it-
concert comes to mind.
Yes,
Oh.
we used it
always
last
used the
year.
stage
Yeah,
for
we never
concerts,
used
But
the
it makes more
risers.
sense, we have a music teacher, different,
Right.
different program and that sort of thing, so that makes sense.
Well, and we want parents to be able to see their kiddos.
Right, yeah.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure if you watch the video, it appears.
Yeah, I think it's just, it's a more recent thing, so
Correct.
they probably were used a long time ago and then they were used again and I was just in the spot for
Yep.
Probably, and the unfortunate piece is we used them last year, realized safety factor, and they won't be able to be used this year. So I know we'll have some folks who are disappointed, but for safety reasons, we need to wait till we get a new set.
Is that just because of setup? I mean, if students weren't involved in setting it up, could they be used, or am I not understanding the concern?
They're very unsafe to set up and take down.
Students aren't involved in the setup at all.
No, it's the
At all.
custodial and grounds crew that does that work,
Yep.
but there's definite concerns around the safety factor.
I mean, to
And
put
they're
in
also just
perspective, one
very
injury-
heavy and bulky. Sorry?
One injury, you've wiped out what you want to spend, so it's easily,
Yeah.
shouldn't be using it.
Other questions?
Anything else?
I thought I'd have personnel questions. Is everyone comfortable with that?
We aren't, personnel's a different, not in your budget,
So that's a different time.
animal.
Okay.
But I think we should at some point, since we have
That's
Mr.
fine.
Finch here and Ms. Chubb here, because their rationales are in there for those new positions, because we're not going to be asking them to come back when we do talk about that, so.
I still think we should go through the sheets.
I think we should go
Yeah,
through the
I
sheets
just-
and then
I
tackle it. Yep.
Hadn't
I just don't want to
reviewed
miss the
that.
opportunity.
But that's fine, so hold that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Tanya, it's a pleasure. Anything you want to say up front?
Well, I've worked really hard to keep the budget in check. I do have one, I guess for lack of a better term, ghost at the middle school, but that is a tentative placement right now for a student who may be placed, so I did put it in the budget, even though the actual money's not being used at this point, but likely will be. But outside of that, this is what it is.
Your budget's down overall.
It is.
But
Many
did I
of
hear you
this.
say you're expecting it to go up?
Nope,
Okay.
I'm not expecting it to go up at all.
Because you budgeted for it.
Correct.
Mhm.
Can you speak to you have a few huge decreases?
Which specific line are you looking at?
Let's see. Be right out of the bat 10-1210. And then 5569-280-47.
So I think the 213,000 was your actual and
Yeah, so that's just based on student movement for students that were placed. And then students who moved out of district and came back in or moved to another town for that decrease, right? right there, tuition for BMS.
Yep.
Yep. That's just based on movement, and you can see there's a slight increase for next school year from the high school, from the middle school to the high school. And that's just based on student movement.
Right. So one goes down, one goes up?
Yep. And based on whether or not a student moves out of district as well and no longer resides in Belmont or Canterbury.
What does tuition CES and tuition BES, what does that mean? So, right under, well, it's under repair and maintenance, but tuition CES.
So that is for a charter school placement that we're responsible for those services. Mhm.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it. So that would be the same, I think I picked up a BES one too, oh, maybe not.
No, I don't have any tuition for BES in there.
Okay.
So I guess there's been a couple, and maybe Deb, you can answer that, like when you said, you know, it's the repair and maintenance, or it's, I guess I'm gonna ask a dumb question. What is that?
So the repair and maintenance are for the 4 transition vehicles that are sitting up at the high school.
But,
It's the other way, it's under purchase technical services, where all the tuitions and travels, if I'm reading this correctly.
so it's underneath it.
Yeah,
is
so
what you're
repair and
saying.
maintenance, if you look above it, you see R&M, BHS, special ed. So then
Right.
that's the line total for everything. So then the tuition and travel looks like it's under purchase technical services.
Why is
Right,
it set
so-
up differently than the others?
That's what I was asking about earlier. It's a wrap.
Set up differently than,
Like, if you look at the way the buildings are set up, you see office of the principal, then everything in office of the principal, and then a total.
So-
Whereas this, it makes me look like, I'm like, why is tuition for CES under repair and maintenance?
well, it's not. So the first
No, I
thing
know.
is,
That's
yeah,
the
so the
12.
first thing is 1210 special ed. That's what this whole function is.
Yep.
And then the first line is repair and maintenance, which is a repair and maintenance line, and then the subtotal repair and maintenance is there. And then it goes into the purchase technical services, which are tuition and travel. So each of those lines is specific and it's broken out by school. So then you have the subtotal of the purchase technical services, because 500 objects are technical services.
Yeah.
And then it goes to the 600s, which are supplies and printed materials.
Does the travel align with the tuition? So like there's a BES travel, but not a tuition for BES.
Correct, so you might have staff members that are traveling for BES purposes, but it may not be necessarily based on a student tuition.
Gotcha.
So if you go to page 4, that's the transportation that aligns with just the tuition placements.
So why would we have 2 separate purchase of tech services?
You have a purchase technical services in every single function. It depends on your objects. So anything that's a 500 object, you could have that in every single one of your functions in the whole budget.
Why is there a separate line for gasoline?
Because it's a different account, it's a 600, and that's the gasoline they use for the transition vehicles.
And the transition vehicles are not in that transportation special ed or the
No,
other?
the transportation special ed are contracted transportation providers. The transition vehicles are used by in-house staff to take some of the students to some of their programs that they do in-house, like the high school does transition programs.
We purchased those 4 vehicles out of a grant, so that way we could reduce the amount of costs that are for transportation, because otherwise that amount would be much higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tanya, just so I'm clear, I'm on page 3, other eval, CES, other eval, all the schools. Is that based on 3-year reeval, is that how you budget those?
So those are contracted, some of them could be, yes, 3-year reevals in terms of some of the prices going up, but those are direct services for the orientation, mobility, special division teacher, the hearing, the ACC, and behavioral. So yeah, we would tie some 3-year reeval costs into those as well, but the large majority of this is for the direct service therapy and other eval.
Why do we, I'm just asking, why do we?
It's the only category available for it.
That's helpful, because I'm like, why the wide, like, significant fluctuations?
So
I mean, it could be based on all kids' 3-year
So this
revals.
is, yeah, and there's also movement too.
Right.
From one school to the next, and that's based on where those students are projected for next year, and that's why you see the.
But that's where if a student needs vision services, hearing services, orientation, mobility, it's gonna come
Technology
out of
specialists
this.
all right there.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So it's more than just.
It's other eval and services, yeah. We
Okay.
can change the title of it, but it's difficult to break out other eval from the actual contracted services for those. So, yeah.
Debbie, remind me, if all the money budgeted last year wasn't spent, I know there was a account set up, you could carry forward up to a certain amount, right?
So the board has the ability to take a percentage of the assessed amount and do that as a retained fund balance.
Yeah.
So they voted this year to carry $800,000 as a retained fund balance, and that comes out of the whole, the available fund balance. And it's a
So
formula.
for that 800,000, if I think I understand what you're saying, if we underspend 800,000 from 23, 24, that retained balance, does it then reduce to 24, 25, or 25, 26, whatever?
So what
Where does
ends
it
up
go?
happening is that 800,000 that we've retained this year,
Yeah.
it goes back in to recalculate the new fund balance next year.
Okay.
So it will kind of sort of go back to offset as a revenue, but then you recalculate a new fund balance, and then that new amount can be retained.
But you can't just use that money.
Right, you can't just use that money.
It has
to be-
specific
right.
purpose.
And it's capped at the 5%, right? So if there's anything over the cap, where does it go?
We have to return that as, to offset the taxes.
Yeah,
When they
okay.
set the tax rate.
So when we finish going through all this budget, does that show up in here at some point, or is there no retainer that's going to go back to the taxpayer?
It doesn't show up in here, it'll show up when I do the revenue piece, because
Right,
we will
yeah.
have the 800,000, obviously, that is sitting there, but DRA doesn't let us show that 800,000 is going back next year, because we really don't know at this point.
Yeah.
So we will have a fund balance.
So does
but
that get adjusted in January then?
It gets adjusted when they set the tax rate in November. So we
in
have to
November.
close the books.
Okay.
Calculate a new fund balance, and then the board determines what they're gonna retain. And then a new calculation is done for taxes.
Okay.
Just to refresh my memory, what can we use that money for?
So if you had an unanticipated item that you don't really have any other funds to cover, you can go to the retained fund balance and use those funds.
We used to have to go to the state for that.
Right, when it first passed, it was 2.5%, and you had to get the approval of the Commissioner of Education. When they changed the law, as long as you adopted the new 5%, they removed that. So it's actually a board decision.
So in the case if there were a student that moved in with special needs and we found ourselves in a position where instead of going negative, we're going to go positive, we could use the retained balance to help fund that, right?
We actually have a special ed educational expendable trust fund
Okay.
that we could go to if we found that we needed to.
Okay.
If we didn't have that trust fund, we could go to the retained. Or if we depleted the trust fund, we could go to the retained.
Okay.
So Tanya, where do we fund kids who get referred for special education evaluation?
So that is absorbed through our school psychologist does that testing as well as OT and speech.
What if they needed this type of evaluation?
Then I would overspend the line and.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
I have one more.
Yeah, sure.
So I went to page 4 where the transportation associated with tuition students is. So there's only BES, BMS, and BHS. Is that a typo? For the BES, should that be CES? And also.
No, because we don't have any transportation that's specialized for Canterbury for next year.
So we don't have to do the.
No, because those students,
transportation
correct, not for next school year.
Can we also clarify, the transportation is not just for tuition students? If a student has transportation needs within their IEP.
Correct.
That's gonna be in here as well. So
Yeah.
it's not just tuition students.
Thank you for that clarification, Debbie, but that is the case. But next year, right now, the way it stands, where those students move, we don't have a need for that next year. Not to say that somebody couldn't move in needing it. Any other questions?
Okay.